In this video, we're going to talk about if your game idea is actually worth pursuing or not. And let me briefly let you know that I made 2 games within 90 days. I'm currently working on another game. I speedrun the game development process for other developers. And with all the titles that we're currently working on, we always start off with the most important question. Is it even worth the pursuit? And, no pressure, but you have to recognize that this is going to be an investment. It takes time to make games. And that's why you want to make sure that when you do make a game, that it makes money, that it has some type of cultural impact, that you don't waste your time making the game, and that every choice that you make actually improves your long-term career here as a developer. So I'm going to tell you what are the criteria of questions we ask to actually make sure that what we're working on is worth pursuing. And the first one is your game fun? And that's a very subjective thing because my definition of fun may be different from yours, and that's totally fine. But I really want to reword this question into what is fun and if your game qualifies that. Being said, there's actually 3 main components that I found with experience that this is probably what you really want to have within your game to make sure that it's just going to have that fun factor that you're looking for. And the first one is if your game has a strong risk and reward gameplay loop. And what this basically means is you want to have an element, a mechanic, an event, something that compels the player to go ahead and proactively make a choice within the context of the game world. So, for example, in Dodge King, you have to dodge, right? If you dodge, you get points, you get upgrades, you get rewards, you get stronger, you progress you get like more levels, you get more EXP, you unlock more characters. There's a lot of rewards on dodging. That's the reward part. But the risk of you not dodging is you taking damage, you losing your run, you messing up your new high score and everything. And so you're at this really interesting gray area where technically you don't have to dodge, but the game will continue to feel more fun when you do that. And so the long story short is you take the gameplay mechanic and give it a lot of reasons for the player to use that gameplay mechanic to go ahead and make progress within the game. That's risk and reward. Engagement or engagement effects are basically what are the toy factors of your game, right? Like, do you have a lot of particle effects? Do you have these cool sound effects? Do you have a lot of feedback and reactions whenever you press a button, whenever you open a gate, whenever you hit an enemy, whenever you gain something, whenever you get a reward? These things will create the ability for players to just constantly come back to the game over and over again. And that's what's called engagement at the end of the day. Finally, and this one's kind of tricky, is can the game feel comfortable to play? Meaning, do the buttons feel right? Does the menu feel okay? Is the game balance up, like well balanced, right? Like there's a lot of subjective factors, and this is kind of where play testing comes in, where you come in and do a lot of work to make sure that, hey, every motion of the game feels comfortable so that the experience as a whole can genuinely be enjoyed. These are the 3 questions you want to pay attention to. Does your game have strong risk and reward? Is it engaging? And is it comfortable to play? If your game idea or prototype or current game fulfills those, then you have a fun game. If you don't, you should take a step back and really realize, recognize and kind of talk to yourself and be like, what do I need to do? What decisions or design choices do I have to switch in order to really make sure that I'm achieving that fun factor that is super necessary within the context of making these projects, right? Once you have that, you go to step 2, which is your game easy to understand? Now, this isn't applicable for every game genre because, again, there are games that are going to be complicated, specifically card games, right? Because there's like a lot of rules, there's a lot of things they have to pay attention to, and that's totally fine. What I do want to, the reason why I'm bringing this up is you really want to showcase how intuitive your game's design is. And again, not applicable for every game, but the reason why this is so important is because the quicker you're able to understand something, the easier it is to invest into it. And so, for example, on the left, this is Dodge King Mini, right? Basically, it's Dodge King. It's just, yeah, you're dodging left and right, but you have buttons, you have counterattacks, you have like a lot of things going on that truly are not necessary and kind of take away from the gameplay experience. Where on the right, we have Dodge King Deluxe, which is just, hey, just focus on dodging. The entire game will take care of itself for you. Just focus on what actually matters the most, all right? And so it's not that you have to simplify the game, but it's just that if you are able to showcase this and if players are able to understand it rapidly, oh, this is a game about dodging, then you will have a higher probability of conversion, of interest, and again, just letting the player invest their time in kind of learning what this is about. Again, not applicable for everything because there are card games that are very successful because it's like, oh, it is complicated, but it's fun to learn and it's really cool and it has a lot of depthful mechanics and that's great. But the rule of thumb is just to make sure what you are presenting can easily be consumed. If you can satisfy that, then we go to the next question. Will there be uncommon features? And by uncommon, I kind of mean like niche, right? And this is just a very simple way to say if you have a gap on what you're actually trying to achieve, right? So, for example, this game is about attacking and fighting. It's literally just a battle simulator, right? It's a twin stick shooter, a grid-based twin stick shooter game, right? So your goal is to move around on a grid and attack enemies and vice versa, survive and battle, right? Pretty simple stuff, right? So why do I have a time-based shield, randomized weapon, weird lock-on mechanics, and like there's so many things you can design for that just absolutely crushes the main objective of what you're trying to get through when it comes to making a game. And you just like, why do you need that, right? You might argue, oh, because it's unique, because it hasn't been done before, because it's innovative and such. And you can definitely think that mindset and such. But what I do think is that sometimes as developers, we tend to overcomplicate what our main goal actually is. And as a result, we just kind of take away the funness of the game. And so, again, on the left, very weird compilation of mechanics that just end up making a very clunky experience. But on the right, you can see I select the card, I go to the enemy, I do an attack, call it a day. The next question in our criteria, is your game interesting? And this is a very subjective question, but there are actually objective answers. And it truly just comes down to the simple trick. You must identify the key element that gravitates your players towards your game. This could be the theme, something like Knights versus Robots. This could be the actual events that happen within the game, right? Maybe you take a weapon and you change your physical form. Maybe you're fighting giant mechas. There's a bunch of excuses that you can make to make your game, again, like appealing, right? But it just truly comes down to leveraging what is interesting. This means what is polarizing. Do you have cool characters? Do you have cool events? Are you emulating feelings? Are you letting the player do something that they wouldn't regularly do in other games or in the real world, right? What can you do to provide an experience that makes the player say, hey, you know what? That sounds fun. That sounds great. That sounds unusual. And I actually want to invest time in doing so. And so if you can identify that, then you have something that's extremely important. But then now you have the ability to just continue to leverage that so that more players can find themselves in a position to say, hey, yeah, this sounds great. I want to try that out. And I have a whole talk on this as well, but like there are many ways to do it, but it really comes down to polarization, making the player feel certain things, and honestly just having a lot of mix of concepts that are unusual, but they just tend to work. And so once you have that, you have one final question to ask within this criteria, which is what is the impression that my game actually makes at the end of the day? And this is kind of like a double-edged sword because you have the idea and the actual execution, right? If you're still formulating your ideas, then what you're trying to look for is when you present your idea, is the person listening to you? Are they engaged? Are they like, yeah, that sounds great? Are they adding more details? Are they really trying to get deeper into the conversation because they found it that reactive? Or are they more like, oh, it sounds cool? That maybe they're disengaged, maybe they take a step back. Maybe there are certain things that you're communicating that just doesn't spark that interest, and that's okay. This is where you have to kind of take a step back and again reevaluate, redesign, try to understand what do I need to do to cause a very strong impression. Likewise, when you have an actual prototype, a build, the game's actually playable and such, try to record how your players react, right? Like, are they taking too long? Are they finding obstacles? Are they frustrated? Are they having fun? Are they asking questions? Are they experimenting? Are they spending a lot of time? Do they have a positive perception? What are the type of feedbacks that they're giving? Is it objective, subjective, critical? Like, pay very close attention to all of these. All of this is to say that whether it's an idea or like the actual feedback that players give you, you really want to figure out if you can find a way to like put this into metrics and then really say, okay, well, let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the volume. This amount of percent of players found this reaction. A lot of them were positive. A lot of them were negative. Oh, a lot of them had complaints here. You need to find a way to figure these out and then design a way and tailor yourself to like fix this idea so that it can continue to massively appeal to as many players as possible. So let's say you recognize, congratulations, my game is fun. It's easy to understand. Players are reacting really good to it. There's no gaps in the mechanics. Like everything's really good, right? Does that mean the game's worth making? Probably is, honestly. If you can have a fun game, go for it, right? But there's another layer to talk about, which is, again, these things take time, right? Do you really want to spend 3 months working on a fun game, but maybe it doesn't like hit the mass media? Maybe, it's not as viral as you think it's going to be. Well, there are strategies that we can take to lower the risk of spending this much time on a game. And, this is why I say, hey guys, we got to make games faster and everything. But there are other things to kind of pay attention to. So I'm going to break it down into 3 main things you have to pay attention to when it comes to like lowering the risk when it comes to making games. But I will primarily tell you, the better you are as a game designer, the more likely it is to just get better results. Okay. And this is kind of just like a life concept in general. If you're skillful in one area in a specific field, then you are probably going to be very successful at that field. And the reason why is because these skills objectively just trump every obstacle you're going to find. If you have a really cool, really fun, really appealing game, you're probably going to crush marketing. You're probably going to get the psychological impact that players are looking for. You're probably just going to have like the rewards of like, oh yeah, this is a really cool game. You guys should try it out, right? And so all this is to say that yes, it's going to take time and experience to get to that point, but please pay attention that with every decision you make that you're proactively getting better no matter what. Being said, let's say, let's talk about marketing for a second, right? Like you want to make sure your game's appealing. But again, this is why we talked about, hey, your game should be easy to introduce, easy to consume, easy to understand. Because once you have something that can objectively just talk by itself, then now you have leverage. Now you have attention. Now you have the ability to kind of like talk about it, right? And so, games like Repo, Cannon Head, Power World, you look at them and they all have something going for them, right? Repo is funny, it's scary, but it's also a multiplayer game and it's meant to be shared. Like there's a lot of cool things about it, and you could argue its virality through multiplayer and the little funny clips that people post online. But that's part of its appeal. And so, as a developer and designer, you had to kind of like think about it and say, well, what if we made a horror multiplayer game that's funny, right? This is the result of that. Power World, Pokemon with guns, right? Pretty straightforward, but also like, why didn't I think about that? Why wasn't this combination something that was already introduced? It's fun, open world. You have a lot of capturables. You have a lot of building and crafting. Like these are mechanics that are very popular as well. And then Cannon Head, it's nostalgic. Once you see it, you're like, oh, this is kind of cute. This is cool. But also, it looks really great. Oh, it reminds me of like, the PS2 era. But it's also like, what if Mickey Mouse was like, a modern character nowadays, which he probably is, right? But the whole point is like, you really want to key down everything that makes your game appealing, double down on that, and then again build off of it, right? The 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 more appealing your game is on paper and like again in execution as well, like it's not to choose the side or another, the more likely you are to make a viral game. And if a game goes viral, then guess what? You're probably going to have something that is just going to naturally get more attention, and it's going to go ahead and boost your sales, your conversions, help you recognize, yeah, my investment in this project was worth it because it got me the results that I'm looking for. Likewise, if we're talking about, engagement, right? Because you really want to make sure that whenever you're making a game, it's fun. But engagement plays such a huge role in the sense that it's what keeps the player coming back and really like, again, maximizing their time in the game world. And the reason why this is important is because, again, you get increased word of mouth, you get recommendations, you get positive receptions, right? And so engagement just comes down to what would happen if you designed and presented your game like a toy. And I just really want you to think about this for a second, right? Think about a child who picks up an action figure and it's like, oh, I'm Superman, and he starts flying around and he starts like buzzing the action figure everywhere. He even throws it, and you're like, bro, he's just playing with a piece of plastic, right? Like, why is he having so much fun? It's the fantasy that he's giving to the toy. It's the role playing part. It's the sound effects. It's what he does to give it life. And so the difference between a plastic object like a action figure versus a video game is that video games are the entire experience. It's our job as designers to emulate that virtual experience to let players have the experiences that we want them to have. Again, it's not every day that you get to drive a car at 3,000 miles per hour. Maybe you don't have physical wings in this world and you want to fly. Like you can make a game that makes you fly. There's crafting games, there's building games, there's games that you're Spider-Man. Like there's so many excuses to do something really out of reality, and that's the privilege of what us game developers have. And so if we continue to double down on that and really like focus on that craft, you have the ability to make really, really engaging experiences. And this is going to be very important for making sure that your idea is worth making, because let's be honest, if you made a game that's mundane, boring, just replicates a part of life, like the boring part, like who would want to get that? Versus, oh, in this game you're Spider-Man. Oh, in this game you're flying a jet. Oh, in this game you get to play as whoever you want in the world. Like there's a lot of cool games that when you filter down what their main idea is all about, it's just you're emulating something else that you just wouldn't do in the real world. That's part of the charm of game dev, right? And finally, like I said earlier with like, oh, you want to make sure that you improve your skill as much as possible. You just have to, right? One, the better the skill, the better the game, and the better the game, the better the games you can make. But also, the better experience that players have, as in like if they're really enjoying every portion of the game, it's just gonna have naturally a higher reception around the world or the market in this case. So always make sure to improve proactively no matter what you do. And I want to give a quick shout out to Aramis because one, I like on paper, I've seen his content before. I think he's a really cool developer and such. But the thing is, recently he made this black hole game that's really cool, and he made this really masterful video about how he made specific design choices within the first 2 minutes of the game, so that it's like really fun and engaging, and like that's how he captured his audiences or his players, attention for the game. But the interesting part about this is Aramis's third commercial game. You can see all of his experiences just kind of like, meshing into this one project. And then you can quickly see just like what it means to actually improve your game design over the years and to get to the position where it's like, oh, I'm making these choices so I can make a good game, so I can make it appealing, so I can make it viral, so I can do this, so I can do that. It's just it's a natural cause of what happens when you get better at your craft. So speaking of strategies you can do to continue minimizing the risk of making games, put a deadline. I keep telling you guys should fast forward your game, right? You guys should make the game as quickly as possible. But how do you realistically do that comes down to two appropriations, which is the first one is get rid of all your distractions. Pretty obvious to say, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But also add deadlines, right? If you have a deadline in a calendar and if you respect that deadline with your heart and soul, you're going to find yourself in a position where you're crunching all the work possible within that constrained amount of time to the point where you're actually going to produce that. And so I have a bunch of videos on this channel that talk about that. But really, what I want you to take away is if you think a game takes a year, challenge yourself to make it in 2 months. And then what happens is you're going to say, oh, I didn't make the game in 2 months, but on the second month, you're probably 80% done anyway. That 80% mark was going to be the same 80% mark you would have done in a year had you not put in the deadline. Deadlines are easily one of the greatest hacks of all time. It'll force you and push you to make as much progress as possible within a constrained amount of time. So please, please, please start putting deadlines in yourself and start assessing and respecting the deadline to the point where if you don't complete it, well, guess what? It's on you. But you really, really make sure that you do it correctly. All right. Just add a deadline, follow it with your heart, and you will finish things rapidly. Or you would at least make a bunch of progress with it. So keep that in mind. The second thing is, and again, this is very common advice. I'm sorry if I sound like I'm regurgitating, but people say, a lot of developers say, hey, make small games. I'm not saying make a small game, but small scope actually helps you a lot because now you're basically working on a feature that just focuses on one core idea. And if it goes well for you, good, you profit it. If not, guess what? You make another game and then you do the exact same thing. One core idea on the other game, push it, get it out commercially. Because you're naturally improving your skill, you now have a better game out there. And then you rinse and repeat. You do it a third time. And then on your fourth time or on your magnum opus or whenever you want to compile every single skill you've had since you started game development, you can put that all in this one mega game that has all of the features that you're looking for. And now not only are you making a bigger, better, and more efficient game, but you have the tools and resources and all the assets that you've been working for in this new one so that it accelerates that pace of the new game. So I say this because I made Dodge King 1, then I made Dodge King Mini, then I made Dodge King Deluxe. I launched a game, I launched Dodge King twice commercially, and nobody batted an eye. It's like, what the heck? Like, nobody's gonna come down and say, hey, you made your game twice. That's bad. It's like, well, whatever, right? But the point is now I have a game coming up that uses the dodging, the moving, and the upgrade systems of these previous games while incorporating its own new mechanics in this new one, right? Whole point is make games, not one game. Don't iterate over and over. Just go ahead and launch, do it again, rinse and repeat. As you do this, you build the habit of making games quickly. You start to improve your skills, and then also your investment in the project gets minimized because now you're just like making multiple streams of revenue. Now you're having the ability to see what works, what doesn't. You're taking feedback on parts that suck on the game, then you're like taking that away on your next one. Like it's just going to help you when you have a large portfolio of multiple games under your own name, right? And then finally, the last two items that I want to talk about is like how to actually avoid mistakes when you're executing. I just briefly talked about this, but you need to stay focused, okay? And focus is not a skill you develop. Focus is simply just getting rid of distractions. If you're constantly distracted, if you're constantly doom scrolling, looking at things you're not supposed to, hanging out too much with your friends, like there's a lot of controversial things about this, but the more distracted you are as an individual, the less likely you are going to make progress in your other games. And this also means, let's say you are working on your game and you find this really cool new game idea and you're like, oh, let me just add that to my other game. No, now you're disrespecting the scope of your project, and this is deadly because you're just bloating the game with more features, more items, and it's just going to take forever to finish it. Lock down, define, and finish what you originally stated, even if it's boring, even if it sucks, because distractions are your number one opponent in life. Just please always double down on what's in front of you, finish it, and then go ahead and pursue something new after that's completed. And by the way, embrace boredom, all right? Like on paper, yeah, this is fun. I'm making characters, I'm making things come to life. Like, yeah, that's the privilege of a developer. But the reality is 90% of the time we're coding, we're debugging, we're doing the boring work, we're making systems, we're marketing. Like there's so many clumps of like tasks that you're like, I just don't want to do this. you have to deal with it. You just have to go ahead and deal with that boredom. If you don't, you're gonna be in this constant stream of, oh, I just want the dopamine, I just want the fun effects, I just want to have like as much fun as possible. And then you become a hobbyist by doing that, which no beef, like you can definitely take that approach and that's totally valid. But if you really want to be professional, if you really want to launch as many commercial games as possible, if you really want to make a living out of this, you have to embrace the boredom no matter what. So, to finally recap on everything that we just talked about, how do you know if your game idea is actually worth pursuing? Number one, objectify your development approach. Make sure that the idea you're working on actually has some, key elements that are appealing. Make sure that it's actually fun, which means make sure that you have risk and reward. Make sure that it's engaging, comfortable to play. Try to find those reactions of players and people that you talk to that are like, yeah, this sounds like a great idea, this works. Validate your idea to make sure that it's actually worth pursuing. Then, like I said here, measure reactions and impressions. You're just validating all of that. Focus on strategies that prevent you from losing your resources, meaning time is the most important resource, so go ahead and make things quickly. You probably don't want to spend $1 bajillion on your game if you're not at the position where your game's already making a bunch of money, right? If you are working on your first game, yeah, keep your budget small. If you're working on your 10th game and you have multiple streams of revenue because of other games that you launched, then now you have an excuse or a reason to go ahead and formally use finances to invest in your next upcoming game. And lastly, build games, not your game, which means build your portfolio, build multiple games, launch multiple games, be commercial, launch as many projects as possible, collect feedback, see what works. Do the process of actually launching on Steam to see how Steam works. Because a lot of us probably have a lot of projects that we just haven't published, but we're like, oh, but I don't want to go on Steam and see how that. No, like that procedure is so technical and it's so beautiful, and like you 100% have to try it out your first time so that you know what mistakes not to make on your second time. And again, go for it. You can always iterate on one game as much as you want, but again, it's just more viable as a career path to just launch as many times as possible with different other titles until you're at a position where you have a strong skill set, you know what to do, you know how to make more games, you know how to make money, you know how to do all the movements that are necessary. So just continue to build your skill. Being said, if you know your game is fun, if you know it's valid to go for it, and if you're ready to minimize the risk of losing your resources, then you should absolutely pursue the idea that you're currently working for. And with that, I conclude with this video. Just want to say, if you found this useful, go ahead and check out my channel for some other videos. I know I recommended a lot of videos in this video in particular, so you can go ahead and check the link down in the description below. And at the moment, I'm currently taking consultation calls for a limited amount of time. So if that's interesting to you, then just let me know. And yeah, hopefully this helps you out. And as usual, if you have questions, please leave them in the comment down below. Appreciate it.